I need all units to Maple Ridge Estates. We have reports of armed individuals trespassing on private property. The sheriff's voice crackled over the radio, his tone deadly serious. As I watched through my security cameras, 3 men in tactical vests marked HOA Security were trying to force their way onto my property. Little did they know they were about to face criminal charges that would expose years of corruption in our community. But let me start from the beginning. Hey everyone, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because this story is just the beginning of an incredible journey about standing up against HOA overreach and winning. Today, I'm going to share how what started as a dream home purchase turned into a battle that would change an entire community and end with armed HOA security facing criminal charges. When I first saw the house at 1442 Maple Ridge Drive, I knew it was perfect. A beautiful 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch sitting on a corner lot with mature oak trees providing just the right amount of shade. As an IT security professional working remotely, I needed a peaceful place where I could focus on my work while enjoying some privacy. This house seemed to check all the boxes. The previous owner, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Johnson, had lived there for over 35 years. He was moving to Florida to be closer to his grandchildren, and he was eager to sell to someone who would appreciate the property as much as he had. During our walkthrough, he mentioned something that actually made the deal even more attractive. The house had a unique legal status within the Maple Ridge Estates community. You see, David, he explained, gesturing to the property lines, when they developed this neighborhood back in '88, this lot was already separately owned. My father refused to join the homeowners association when they formed it. We maintained our independence all these years. I could hardly believe my luck. The house was perfect, and it came with the added bonus of being exempt from HOA control. As someone who valued their independence and had heard horror stories about overzealous HOAs, this seemed like the perfect situation. The price was right. The location was ideal, and the legal independence was the cherry on top. The closing process went smoothly, and by early March I was moving in. The weather was perfect for moving day, and I spent the morning directing the movers and starting to unpack. That's when I first noticed something odd. A black SUV with Maple Ridge Estate Security emblazoned on the side kept driving by my house, slowing down each time it passed. Initially, I didn't think much of it, probably just checking out the new neighbor. But then I met Patricia Thompson, though she insisted everyone call her Trish. She appeared at the edge of my driveway wearing an immaculate white pantsuit and pearl necklace, clipboard in hand. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she introduced herself as the president of the Maple Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. "Mr. Wilson," she said, consulting her clipboard, "I see you've purchased the Johnson property. We'll need to schedule a time to go over the community guidelines and get your compliance paperwork in order." I politely explained that I was aware the property was exempt from HOA jurisdiction, showing her the documentation Mr. Johnson had provided. That's when I saw it. A flash of something in her eyes. Anger, frustration, whatever it was, it disappeared quickly behind a practiced smile. "Oh, that old claim," she laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "There seems to be some confusion. All properties within Maple Ridge Estates are subject to our governance. Our legal team cleared this up years ago. I'll have Greg, he's our head of security, stop by tomorrow to discuss this further." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. I stood there watching her leave when I noticed my neighbor across the street quickly closing his curtains. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. That night, as I was unpacking boxes in my home office, I heard a vehicle outside. Looking through the window, I saw that same black SUV parked across the street, its headlights off. A man in a tactical-style vest was sitting in the driver's seat, staring directly at my house. When he noticed me watching, he started the engine and drove away. I'm glad I trusted my instincts that night and decided to install a comprehensive security system. Those cameras would later prove to be the most important investment I could have made, because what happened next would escalate far beyond anything I could have imagined, and having everything on video would make all the difference. The morning after my encounter with Trish Thompson brought exactly what I'd been dreading: Greg Parker's promised visit. At precisely 8 a.m., a sharp knock echoed through my house. Through the security camera I'd installed the night before, I could see a tall man in a black tactical vest standing on my porch, his stance rigid and authoritative. The vest bore patches, reading Maple Ridge Security in bold white letters, and he wore a utility belt complete with handcuffs, pepper spray, and what appeared to be a taser. I opened the door but kept the security chain engaged, a precaution that immediately seemed to irritate him. Greg Parker introduced himself with the sort of forced politeness that barely masked his contempt. His face was weathered, with deep-set eyes that constantly scanned his surroundings, and he held a tablet in his hands like it was some kind of official law enforcement device. "Mr. Wilson, I'm here to conduct a mandatory security assessment of your property," he announced, attempting to peer past me into my home. "As head of Maple Ridge Estate Security, it's my responsibility to ensure all residents comply with our safety protocols." I remained calm but firm, explaining that I had no obligation to allow any such assessment, given my property's independent status. That's when I noticed Michael Roberts, my elderly neighbor, carefully tending to his garden while obviously trying to overhear our conversation. There was concern written all over his face. Greg's response was immediate and aggressive. "Sir, refusal to comply with security protocols can result in immediate fines and potential intervention. We take community safety very seriously here." His hand instinctively moved to rest on his utility belt, a gesture that seemed deliberately intimidating. I'm not easily rattled. Years of working in IT security had taught me to stay calm under pressure. Instead of backing down, I took out my phone and began recording our interaction. "Mr. Parker, are you aware that impersonating law enforcement is a criminal offense? Because right now, you're dressed and acting in a manner that could be construed as such." His face flushed red, but before he could respond, I noticed Michael quickly making his way over to us. The elderly man moved with surprising speed, inserting himself into the situation with the kind of confidence that comes from experience. "Greg, I think Ms. Thompson needs you back at the clubhouse," Michael said smoothly, his voice carrying a subtle warning. "There's some sort of situation with the pool access cards again." Greg hesitated, clearly annoyed at the interruption, but something in Michael's steady gaze made him step back. "We'll continue this discussion later, Mr. Wilson," he said, trying to maintain his authoritative tone. "Expect formal documentation regarding your non-compliance." As Greg's black SUV pulled away, Michael turned to me with a grim expression. "You need to be careful, son," he said quietly. "That man's been causing trouble ever since Trish hired him last year. He's not actual law enforcement, but he sure likes to pretend he is." Over coffee in Michael's kitchen, I learned the disturbing truth about Maple Ridge Estate's security situation. Greg Parker had been hired after a minor series of car break-ins, but his presence had quickly become more about control than protection. He'd previously worked as a mall security supervisor until an incident involving excessive force led to his dismissal. Somehow, that record hadn't prevented Trish Thompson from putting him in charge of neighborhood security. "They've been trying to force everyone to install their approved security systems," Michael explained, showing me a letter he'd received. "It's all connected to one company, HOA Security Solutions. Funny thing is, Trish's brother-in-law owns the company. The scheme was becoming clear. The HOA was using security concerns as a pretext to force residents into expensive contracts with their preferred vendor. Those who refused faced harassment from Greg and his team of wannabe cops. That afternoon, I decided to do some research of my own. A deep dive into public records revealed that HOA Security Solutions had been incorporated just 3 months before Greg's hiring. The company had no other clients besides Maple Ridge Estates, and their equipment was marked up, nearly 300% above market value. But what truly caught my attention was a series of posts on a local community forum. Other residents had reported similar intimidation tactics from Greg and his team. There were stories of late-night security checks, aggressive confrontations over supposed violations, and even allegations of them photographing residents' children for security documentation. My security cameras captured 4 more drive-bys that day, each time with Greg or one of his deputies making a show of taking notes on their tablets. As night fell, the black SUV parked across the street again, its occupant watching my house for over 2 hours.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I used this time to set up additional cameras and motion sensors around my property. My IT background came in handy as I established a secure system that would document every interaction and back up all footage to cloud storage. Something told me I'd need this evidence sooner rather than later. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Watch out tomorrow. Overheard Greg at the clubhouse. They're planning something. Already called my friend at the sheriff's office. Document everything." The next morning, I found my first official security violation notice taped to my door. The document was filled with official-looking letterhead and threatening language, claiming I was in breach of multiple security protocols. The listed violations included unauthorized surveillance equipment, failure to register with community security, and suspicious behavior. The notice demanded immediate compliance, including the removal of my security cameras and submission to a full property inspection by Greg's team. The final paragraph contained a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply may result in necessary security measures being implemented without further notice. I carefully documented and photographed the notice, then called Jennifer Martinez, the property rights attorney I'd contacted after my first encounter with Trish. She wasn't surprised by any of it. "They're following their usual playbook," Jennifer explained, "but they've gotten sloppy. That notice is written to imply official law enforcement authority they don't have. Keep everything, and whatever you do, don't let them on your property. I'm filing for an emergency injunction this afternoon." As I ended the call with Jennifer, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A group of men in tactical vests were gathering at the clubhouse, and Greg was distributing what looked like official-looking documents to each of them. The real confrontation, I realized, was about to begin. Through my security cameras, I watched as they loaded equipment into their vehicles. The implications were clear. They were preparing for something big. I immediately began backing up all my security footage and sending copies to both Jennifer and Michael. Whatever was coming, I would be ready. What I didn't know then was that their next move would cross a line that not even Trish Thompson could talk her way out of. The events that would unfold over the next 24 hours would not only bring the sheriff's department into the picture, but would ultimately lead to criminal charges that would shake Maple Ridge Estates to its very foundation. Dawn broke over Maple Ridge Estates with an unusual amount of activity. Through my security feeds, I watched 3 black SUVs pull up to the clubhouse at 5:30 a.m. Greg Parker emerged from the lead vehicle, dressed in what appeared to be newly purchased tactical gear, complete with a bulletproof vest and combat boots. He gathered his team around the hood of one SUV, spreading out what looked like blueprints of my property. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. They've called an emergency security meeting, claiming there's terrorist activity in the neighborhood, using it as justification for a security sweep of all properties. I immediately called Jennifer Martinez, my attorney. Despite the early hour, she answered on the second ring. As I described the situation, she interrupted with urgent instructions. David, I'm filing the emergency injunction right now, but it won't be heard for at least 2 hours. Whatever you do, do not open your door. If they attempt entry, call 911 immediately. They're about to cross several legal lines. At exactly 6 a.m., my security system alerted me to movement at the property line. Through the cameras, I watched as Greg divided his team into 3 groups. They were all wearing earpieces and carrying what appeared to be breaching tools. This wasn't just harassment anymore. They were preparing for a tactical operation against my home. Greg approached my front door with 2 men flanking him. His knock was more like a pound. Mr. Wilson, this is Maple Ridge Security. We have reports of suspicious activity and unauthorized surveillance equipment. You have 5 minutes to open this door, or we will be forced to take necessary security measures. I activated my home's external speaker system, another security measure I'd installed. Mr. Parker, you have no legal authority to enter this property. You are being recorded, and any attempt to breach this residence will result in immediate police response and criminal charges. Greg's response was immediate and shocking. He pulled out what appeared to be an official-looking document and began reading in a loud voice. By authority of the Maple Ridge Estates Security Protocol, Section 7.3, we are authorized to conduct emergency security inspections in cases of suspected terrorist activity or unauthorized surveillance operations. And I was already dialing 911 when I noticed movement at my back door. 2 of Greg's men were attempting to pick the lock, while another filmed with a tablet, presumably trying to document their official response to a security threat. My security system's interference measures activated, triggering bright lights and a loud alarm, causing them to jump back. The 911 operator was clear and professional as I explained the situation. Sir, stay inside and secure all doors. Deputies are already en route to your location. Do not engage with these individuals. Through the cameras, I could see Greg's face turning red with rage at being thwarted. He grabbed what looked like a battering ram from one of his men. Final warning, Wilson. We have documentation of potential terrorist activities. You're interfering with an official security operation. That's when a new voice cut through the chaos. And you're about to interfere with an actual law enforcement operation. Sheriff Robert Anderson stood at the edge of my property, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. 2 deputy vehicles pulled up behind him, lights flashing. The change in Greg's demeanor was instant and dramatic. He tried to maintain his authoritative posture, but I could see the fear creeping into his expression. Sheriff, we're conducting a legitimate security operation under HOA authority. Sheriff Anderson cut him off. Mr. Parker, put down that battering ram immediately. Deputies, secure these individuals and check them for weapons. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel. Mr. Parker, I've received multiple reports about your organization impersonating law enforcement. Now I find you attempting to forcibly enter a private residence while armed and wearing tactical gear. Care to explain? The next few minutes were intense. As the deputies began disarming Greg's team, they found pepper spray, tasers, and even handcuffs, all items that, combined with their tactical gear and actions, constituted criminal impersonation of law enforcement. Trish Thompson arrived just as the deputies were securing the last of the tactical gear. She burst out of her Mercedes, waving a folder of documents. Sheriff Anderson, there's been a misunderstanding. We have proper authorization for our security protocols. The sheriff's response was measured but firm. Ms. Thompson, Your HOA has no legal authority to conduct armed raids on private property. What I'm seeing here goes far beyond any legitimate security patrol. Each of these men is facing potential criminal charges. Jennifer Martinez arrived just then, courthouse documents in hand. And I have here an emergency injunction against the HOA and their security team, plus documentation, proving this property is legally exempt from HOA jurisdiction. She turned to Trish with a professional smile. We'll be adding attempted breaking and entering, criminal conspiracy, and terrorist threats to our civil suit. The color drained from Trish's face as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her security force was being disarmed and detained by actual law enforcement. Her head of security was facing criminal charges, and her attempt to force control over my property had spectacularly backfired. Sheriff Anderson ordered his deputies to take statements from everyone present, including several neighbors who had gathered to watch the scene unfold. Michael Roberts provided crucial testimony about the pattern of intimidation he'd witnessed, along with recordings of HOA meetings where the security measures had been discussed. As Greg Parker was being placed in a deputy's vehicle, he started shouting about following orders and having proper authorization. Trish Thompson quickly tried to distance herself, claiming she had no knowledge of his tactical operations, but the documents in her hand told a different story. The sheriff examined the security authorization papers Greg had been wielding. They were designed to look like official law enforcement documents, complete with gold seals and official-sounding language. Ms. Thompson, creating fraudulent documents that impersonate official law enforcement orders is a serious offense. I suggest you contact your attorney immediately. Jennifer pulled me aside as the scene continued to unfold. This is better than we could have hoped for, she said quietly. They've given us everything we need to not only shut down their illegal security operation, but to potentially dissolve the entire HOA board for criminal conspiracy. The morning sun was now fully up, illuminating a scene that would fundamentally change Maple Ridge Estates. Neighbors who had been too afraid to speak up were now giving statements to deputies. The facade of authority that Trish and Greg had built was crumbling in real time. Sarah Chen from the local news had somehow gotten wind of the situation and was already setting up for a live report. The story of an HOA security force attempting an armed raid on a private residence would soon be making headlines across the state. As I watched the deputies lead away the last of Greg's security team, I realized this was just the beginning. The criminal charges these men would face were only part of the story. The real reckoning would come from exposing the years of intimidation and corruption that had led to this moment. The afternoon following the failed raid brought a flurry of activity to Maple Ridge Estates. News vans lined the streets as reporters attempted to interview residents about the morning's events. My security cameras captured Trish Thompson pacing in her front yard, engaged in a heated phone conversation while gesturing wildly at her tablet. Every few minutes, she'd glance towards my house with undisguised hatred. Jennifer Martinez called, with updates from the courthouse. The district attorney is taking this seriously. They've already charged Greg Parker with criminal impersonation of a peace officer and attempted breaking and entering. But here's where it gets interesting. They're also investigating the financial connections between SafeView Security Solutions and the HOA board members. I was reviewing the morning security footage when an unmarked police car pulled up. Detective Sarah Rodriguez from the White Collar Crimes Unit stepped out, her badge glinting in the sunlight. She'd been assigned to investigate the broader implications of the HOA's security scheme. Mr. Wilson, she began, settling into my living room with a thick folder, we've uncovered some disturbing patterns. SafeView Security Solutions isn't just connected to Trish Thompson's brother-in-law. We found shell companies, kickbacks, and what appears to be a complex money laundering operation using inflated security contracts. The detective spread out financial documents across my coffee table. Bank statements showed hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing between Safeview and various shell corporations owned by HOA board members. The security system installation fees residents had been forced to pay were being funneled through these companies and back into personal accounts. My doorbell rang. It was Frank Edwards, the city building inspector. His usual by-the-book demeanor was replaced with obvious concern. Those security system installations weren't just overpriced, he explained, reviewing his tablets. None of them were properly permitted. We found evidence of Safeview tampering with electrical systems, creating serious fire hazards in at least a dozen homes. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about an overzealous security team anymore. The HOA board had created an elaborate criminal enterprise under the guise of community safety. A text from Michael grabbed my attention. Emergency. HOA meeting called for 7 p.m. They're trying to damage control. Better watch your back. Overheard Barbara Mitchell talking about taking care of the Wilson problem one way or another. Jennifer advised against attending the meeting personally, but suggested we send a representative to observe. She'd arranged for a legal intern to attend and take detailed notes. Meanwhile, she was preparing documents for an expanded lawsuit that would now include RICO charges, the same laws used to prosecute organized crime syndicates. By late afternoon, the pressure was mounting. My security system flagged unusual activity around my property perimeter. 3 teenagers were placing small devices near my property line. A quick examination revealed them to be crude motion sensors, connected to cheap cameras, an apparent attempt at amateur surveillance. When confronted by Deputy Cooper, the teens admitted Barbara Mitchell had paid them to monitor my suspicious activities and report back any visitors. The deputy confiscated the devices and added witness tampering to the growing list of charges against the HOA board. The evening brought a new wave of intimidation attempts. Anonymous calls flooded my phone with threats and accusations. Emails poured in from spoofed addresses containing poorly worded legal threats and demands to cease and desist all investigation of community security matters. My security cameras captured Richard Sullivan, the HOA treasurer, attempting to access my electrical meter at midnight. When the automatic lights activated, he quickly retreated to his car, but not before the cameras recorded him carrying what appeared to be wire-cutting tools. Detective Rodriguez was particularly interested in this incident. We found similar patterns at other properties where residents refused to comply with Safeview's installation demands, mysterious power outages followed by aggressive sales, pitches about the need for their superior security systems. The next morning, I discovered my internet was down. A call to the service provider revealed that someone claiming to be me had called to cancel my service. The customer service representative noted that the caller had provided accurate account details, information that should have been secure in the HOA's files. Jennifer was furious when I told her about the identity theft. They're desperate and getting sloppy. Each of these attempts to harass you is just adding evidence to our case, but be careful. Desperate people make dangerous choices. Her warning proved prophetic. That afternoon, a process server arrived with papers indicating I was being sued by Safeview Security Solutions for defamation, interference with business relationships, and cyber harassment. The lawsuit claimed my security cameras and recordings were part of a coordinated campaign to destroy their business reputation. The lawsuit was clearly frivolous. Jennifer actually laughed when she reviewed it. But it was what she found buried in the legal documents that proved most interesting. Hidden in the exhibits were detailed photos of my security camera locations, timestamps of my comings and goings, and even screenshots of my private emails discussing the case. This is a gold mine, Jennifer explained. They've just admitted to extensive surveillance and email hacking in their own legal filing. It's like they're doing our job for us, documenting their own crimes. Detective Rodriguez brought in cybercrime specialists to trace the email intrusions. They discovered a sophisticated hacking operation run through the SafeView security systems installed in compliant homes. The HOA hadn't just been monitoring external security cameras. They'd been using the systems to collect private data from residents' home networks. As night fell, the situation took another dark turn. My motion sensors detected movement in the backyard. The security camera footage showed two men in dark clothing attempting to spray paint my cameras. When the security lights activated, they fled, dropping a paper with detailed instructions written in Greg Parker's handwriting. The police response was immediate this time. Deputies caught the vandals 3 blocks away. They quickly confessed that Barbara Mitchell had hired them through her teenage son's connections, promising to make their records disappear if they helped teach the troublemaker a lesson. By midnight, my phone was buzzing with messages from other residents. The HOA's harassment wasn't limited to me anymore. Anyone who had spoken to the police or reporters was facing retaliation. Mysterious fees appeared on their HOA accounts. Their key fobs to community amenities stopped working, and their names appeared on a suddenly circulated list of security risks to the community. The mounting evidence painted a picture of corruption far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. The HOA board hadn't just created a fake security company. They'd built an entire surveillance state within Maple Ridge Estates, using fear, intimidation, and technology to maintain their power. But as their desperation grew, their carefully constructed scheme was beginning to unravel at an increasing pace. Detective Rodriguez's investigation into Maple Ridge Estates uncovered a web of corruption that stretched far beyond our community. Inside a seemingly innocuous storage unit rented under SafeView Security's name, police discovered boxes of surveillance equipment, unauthorized police badges, and detailed dossiers on hundreds of residents, not just from our neighborhood, but from communities across 3 counties. The storage unit revelation sparked an expanded investigation. Local cybersecurity experts were called in to analyze SafeView's server data, which had been seized during the execution of a search warrant. What they found was staggering. The company had installed backdoors in every security system they'd placed in homes, allowing them complete access to residents' private networks, cameras, and even smart home devices. Sarah Chen's investigative reporting team discovered that Greg Parker's influence extended into local law enforcement. Before his mall security job, he'd been dismissed from the police academy in another state for concerning behavior, but those records had mysteriously vanished when he applied for his security license in our state. Someone had helped him clean up his past. A breakthrough came when Helen Crawford, the HOA secretary, cracked under the pressure of the investigation. She'd been meticulously documenting everything, keeping a second set of books that detailed every illegal transaction, every act of harassment, and every board meeting where they'd planned their security schemes. Her documentation revealed a calculated plan to create a private surveillance network under the guise of community safety. Jennifer Martinez brought in forensic accountants to trace the money trail. They discovered that SafeView's security equipment was being purchased from a Chinese manufacturer for pennies on the dollar, marked up over 1,000%, and installed with hidden monitoring capabilities. The profits were being laundered through a complex network of shell companies, with kickbacks flowing to everyone involved in the scheme. The investigation revealed that Trish Thompson's ambitions went far beyond our neighborhood. She'd been positioning herself to expand their security operation into other communities, using Maple Ridge Estates as a proof of concept. Emails recovered from SafeView's servers showed negotiations with other HOA boards, promising to help them maintain complete control over their communities through comprehensive surveillance programs. Frank Edwards, the building inspector, brought in electrical experts to examine Safeview's installations. They found that the security systems had been designed to do more than just monitor. They could remotely cut power to homes, disable internet connections, and even lock residents out of their own security systems. This capability had been used multiple times to force compliance with HOA demands. Michael's connections in the sheriff's office proved invaluable. His friend, Deputy James Cooper, had been quietly building a case against Greg Parker for months, documenting instances of his team impersonating law enforcement across multiple jurisdictions. The evidence included body camera footage from legitimate police officers who'd encountered Parker's team attempting to conduct traffic stops outside our community. A forensic analysis of the tablets seized from Parker's security team revealed an app that generated fake law enforcement documents. The program included templates for search warrants, court orders, and official police notifications, all designed to intimidate residents into compliance. The app had been custom developed by a programmer who was promised immunity in exchange for testimony about who commissioned the software. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Rodriguez discovered connections between Safeview and several private prisons. Richard Sullivan, the HOA treasurer, had previously worked as a consultant for these facilities, implementing surveillance systems remarkably similar to what was being installed in our homes. The technology had been adapted from prison monitoring systems, designed to track and control every aspect of residents' lives. Barbara Mitchell's role in the scheme became clear when investigators found a makeshift command center in her home office. Multiple monitors displayed live feeds from throughout the neighborhood, recording residents' daily routines. She'd been compiling detailed reports on everyone's movements, visitors, and activities, using this information to optimize their harassment campaigns. The cybercrime unit uncovered evidence that Safeview systems had been used to intercept private communications, emails, text messages, and even voice recordings from smart home devices had been collected and stored. The data was being analyzed using artificial intelligence to identify potential troublemakers who might resist the HOA's authority. A former Safeview employee came forward with insider knowledge of the company's training practices. New security officers were taught intimidation tactics, coached on how to imply law enforcement authority without explicitly claiming it, and instructed on methods to manipulate security footage to support false violation claims. The training materials, which the whistleblower provided, had been personally approved by Trish Thompson. The investigation revealed that the HOA's surveillance operation had even extended to monitoring children. Cameras had been strategically placed around the community playground and pool, with facial recognition software tracking which residents' children played together. This information was used to pressure parents through their children's social connections, threatening to exclude families from community events if they didn't comply with HOA demands. Jennifer's legal team discovered that Safeview had created a secret blacklist of residents who were marked for extra surveillance and harassment. The criteria for making this list included attending city council meetings, questioning HOA fees, or simply being seen talking to residents who had previously opposed board decisions. The existence of this list provided crucial evidence of organized harassment and civil rights violations. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that the HOA board had created a sophisticated system of control and intimidation that went far beyond typical community governance. They hadn't just violated laws, they'd established a private surveillance state using modern technology to create a level of monitoring and coercion that would have been impossible just a few years ago. The evidence was mounting, but the most damaging revelation came from an unexpected source. A teenage hacker, hired by Barbara Mitchell's son to help monitor residents' networks, had kept his own records of everything he'd been asked to do. His documentation included video recordings of board meetings where the surveillance strategy was discussed, complete with Trish Thompson explicitly outlining their plan to use security systems to maintain absolute control over every aspect of residents' lives. Detective Rodriguez's team was building a case that would reshape how HOAs operated across the state. The investigation had uncovered not just criminal behavior, but a systematic attempt to create a private police force with surveillance capabilities that exceeded those of legitimate law enforcement. The implications reached far beyond our community, threatening to expose similar schemes in HOAs nationwide. Jennifer Martinez's office buzzed with activity as her legal team assembled the most comprehensive case against an HOA that the state had ever seen. Spread across 3 conference room tables, evidence mounted in carefully organized folders, surveillance footage, financial records, witness statements, and technical reports from cybersecurity experts. The scope of the case had grown far beyond a simple property dispute. "We're not just filing a civil suit anymore," Jennifer explained, gesturing to the wall of evidence. "We're providing the foundation for a federal RICO case. The FBI's white-collar crime division has taken interest, particularly in the interstate aspects of their surveillance operation." She pulled up a complex diagram on her tablet, showing the intricate web of shell companies and money laundering. Operations that SafeView had established across multiple states. The cybersecurity team I'd brought in from my IT contacts had made a crucial breakthrough. By reverse engineering SafeView's security system software, they'd discovered that every camera and sensor installed in residents' homes contained a hidden cellular modem. Even if homeowners disabled their internet connections, the systems continued transmitting data to SafeView's servers through these backup channels. Detective Rodriguez arrived with new search warrant results. The police had raided a second storage facility, this one registered to Barbara Mitchell's shell company. Inside, they found original HOA documents that had been reported lost years ago, including the original property agreements proving that several homes, not just mine, were legally exempt from HOA control. A forensic accountant named Marcus Chen joined our team, specializing in analyzing complex financial fraud schemes. His preliminary review of SafeView's books revealed a pattern of artificial inflation in security system costs. "They weren't just marking up equipment," he explained, pointing to a spreadsheet. "They were creating ghost installations, charging for security systems in homes that didn't exist, then using those fake charges to justify rate increases across the entire community." The district attorney's office assigned prosecutor Lisa Blackwood to coordinate with Jennifer. Her experience with organized crime cases proved invaluable as we structured the legal strategy. "This isn't just about individual criminal acts," she explained. "We're dealing with a criminal enterprise that used legitimate business structures as a cover for systematic exploitation and surveillance." Michael's testimony proved crucial in establishing the timeline of escalation. His meticulous notes and recordings of HOA meetings showed how Trish Thompson had gradually introduced more invasive security measures, each time using manufactured security threats to justify increased surveillance. His documentation included dates, times, and exact quotes that demonstrated the premeditated nature of their scheme. The technical evidence mounted as our cybersecurity team dug deeper into SafeView's systems. They discovered that the security software contained features typically found in military-grade surveillance systems. The source code revealed capabilities for facial recognition, behavior analysis, and even mood detection through AI processing of camera feeds. These features had never been disclosed to residents. Frank Edwards brought in electrical engineering experts who confirmed that SafeView's installations violated numerous building codes. More disturbingly, They found that the systems had been designed with the capability to remotely access home automation features, potentially allowing SafeView to control everything from garage doors to interior temperatures without residents, knowledge or consent. Sarah Chen's investigative reporting uncovered a pattern of similar security schemes in other states. Her research revealed that Greg Parker had attempted to implement comparable surveillance systems in 3 other communities before arriving at Maple Ridge Estates. Each time, he'd been forced to leave when residents began questioning his authority, but he'd refined his tactics with each attempt. The legal strategy took shape around 3 main thrust points. First, the criminal charges related to impersonating law enforcement and attempted breaking and entering. Second, the civil rights violations stemming from illegal surveillance and harassment. Third, the financial crimes involving fraud, money laundering, and racketeering across state lines. Jennifer brought in a civil rights attorney named Robert Torres to strengthen our case. His expertise in privacy law and constitutional violations added another dimension to our legal approach. They didn't just violate state laws, he explained. Their surveillance program constitutes a systematic violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. Our technical team made another breakthrough when they discovered that SafeView's servers contained recordings from inside homes, captured through security cameras and smart home devices. The footage included private moments, conversations, and activities that residents had never consented to have monitored. This evidence transformed the case from a local property dispute into a major privacy rights issue. Deputy Cooper provided crucial insight into how Greg Parker's team had manipulated local law enforcement. By positioning themselves as a professional security force and cultivating relationships with junior officers, they'd created confusion about their actual authority. This deliberate blurring of lines between private security and law enforcement formed the basis for additional criminal charges. The strategic preparation expanded to include protection for other residents who had come forward. Jennifer worked with the sheriff's office to establish a secure reporting system for witnesses, ensuring they could provide evidence without fear of retaliation. Each new testimony strengthened the pattern of systematic abuse and control. Marcus Chen's team uncovered offshore accounts linked to Trish Thompson and other board members. The financial trail showed that the surveillance operation was just part of a larger scheme to extract money from the community through inflated fees, fabricated violations, and forced security upgrades. The complexity of their financial network indicated professional expertise in concealing illegal profits. As our case solidified, we received an unexpected ally. A former SafeView employee who had quit after discovering the true nature of their operation provided internal training. Documents. These materials explicitly detailed methods for intimidating residents, manipulating security footage, and using psychological pressure to ensure compliance with HOA demands. The legal team organized the evidence into a compelling narrative that demonstrated the gradual evolution of the HOA's surveillance state. Beginning with simple security cameras and expanding to include comprehensive monitoring of residents' daily lives, the documentation showed a clear pattern of escalating control and privacy violations. Lisa Blackwood worked with federal prosecutors to coordinate the multiple jurisdictional aspects of the case. The interstate nature of SafeView's operations, combined with the financial crimes and civil rights violations, elevated the case to federal court. This development brought additional resources and investigative power to our efforts. As the legal strategy came together, it became clear that this case would set precedents for HOA governance and private security operations nationwide. The intersection of property rights, privacy concerns, and community governance raised constitutional questions that courts would need to address. Jennifer Martinez's office buzzed with activity as her legal team assembled the most comprehensive case against an HOA that the state had ever seen. Spread across 3 conference room tables, evidence mounted in carefully organized folders, surveillance footage, financial records, witness statements, and technical reports from cybersecurity experts. The scope of the case had grown far beyond a simple property dispute. "We're not just filing a civil suit anymore," Jennifer explained, gesturing to the wall of evidence. "We're providing the foundation for a federal RICO case." The FBI's white-collar crime division has taken interest, particularly in the interstate aspects of their surveillance operation. She pulled up a complex diagram on her tablet showing the intricate web of shell companies and money laundering, operations that SafeView had established across multiple states. The cybersecurity team I'd brought in from my IT contacts had made a crucial breakthrough. By reverse engineering SafeView's security system software, they discovered that every camera and sensor installed in residents' homes contained a hidden cellular modem. Even if homeowners disabled their internet connections, the systems continued transmitting data to SafeView's servers through these backup channels. Detective Rodriguez arrived with new search warrant results. The police had raided a second storage facility, this one registered to Barbara Mitchell's shell company. Inside, they found original HOA documents that had been reported lost years ago, including the original property agreements proving that several homes, not just mine, were legally exempt from HOA control. A forensic accountant named Marcus Chen joined our team, specializing in analyzing complex financial fraud schemes. His preliminary review of SafeView's books revealed a pattern of artificial inflation in security system costs. They weren't just marking up equipment, he explained, pointing to a spreadsheet. They were creating ghost installations, charging for security systems in homes that didn't exist, then using those fake charges to justify rate increases across the entire community. The district attorney's office assigned prosecutor Lisa Blackwood to coordinate with Jennifer. Her experience with organized crime cases proved invaluable as we structured the legal strategy. "This isn't just about individual criminal acts," she explained. "We're dealing with a criminal enterprise that used legitimate business structures as a cover for systematic exploitation and surveillance." Michael's testimony proved crucial in establishing the timeline of escalation. His meticulous notes and recordings of HOA meetings showed how Trish Thompson had gradually introduced more invasive security measures, each time using manufactured security threats to justify increased surveillance. His documentation included dates, times, and exact quotes that demonstrated the premeditated nature of their scheme. The technical evidence mounted as our cybersecurity team dug deeper into SafeView's systems. They discovered that the security software contained features typically found in military-grade surveillance systems. The source code revealed capabilities for facial recognition, behavior analysis, and even mood detection through AI processing of camera feeds. These features had never been disclosed to residents. Frank Edwards brought in electrical engineering experts who confirmed that SafeView's installations violated numerous building codes. More disturbingly, they found that the systems had been designed with the capability to remotely access home automation features, potentially allowing SafeView to control everything from garage doors to interior temperatures without residents' knowledge or consent. Sarah Chen's investigative reporting uncovered a pattern of similar security schemes in other states. Her research revealed that Greg Parker had attempted to implement comparable surveillance systems in 3 other communities before arriving at Maple Ridge Estates. Each time, he'd been forced to leave when residents began questioning his authority, but he'd refined his tactics with each attempt. The legal strategy took shape around 3 main thrust points. First, the criminal charges related to impersonating law enforcement and attempted breaking and entering. Second, the civil rights violations stemming from illegal surveillance and harassment. Third, the financial crimes involving fraud, money laundering, and racketeering across state lines. Jennifer brought in a civil rights attorney named Robert Torres to strengthen our case. His expertise in privacy law and constitutional violations added another dimension to our legal approach. They didn't just violate state laws, he explained. Their surveillance program constitutes a systematic violation of Fourth Amendment, rights against unreasonable search and seizure. Our technical team made another breakthrough when they discovered that SafeView's servers contained recordings from inside homes, captured through security cameras and smart home devices. The footage included private moments, conversations, and activities that residents had never consented to have monitored. This evidence transformed the case from a local property dispute into a major privacy rights issue. Deputy Cooper provided crucial insight into how Greg Parker's team had manipulated local law enforcement. By positioning themselves as a professional security force and cultivating relationships with junior officers, they'd created confusion about their actual authority. This deliberate blurring of lines between private security and law enforcement formed the basis for additional criminal charges. The strategic preparation expanded to include protection for other residents who had come forward. Jennifer worked with the sheriff's office to establish a secure reporting system for witnesses, ensuring they could provide evidence without fear of retaliation. Each new testimony strengthened the pattern of systematic abuse and control. Marcus Chen's team uncovered offshore accounts linked to Trish Thompson and other board members. The financial trail showed that the surveillance operation was just part of a larger scheme to extract money from the community through inflated fees, fabricated violations, and forced security upgrades. The complexity of their financial network indicated professional expertise in concealing illegal profits. As our case solidified, we received an unexpected ally, a former SafeView employee who had quit after discovering the true nature of their operation, provided internal training documents. These materials explicitly detailed methods for intimidating residents, manipulating security footage, and using psychological pressure to ensure compliance with HOA demands. The legal team organized the evidence into a compelling narrative that demonstrated the gradual evolution of the HOA's surveillance state. Beginning with simple security cameras and expanding to include comprehensive monitoring of residents' daily lives, the documentation showed a clear pattern of escalating control and privacy violations. Lisa Blackwood worked with federal prosecutors to coordinate the multiple jurisdictional aspects of the case. The interstate nature of SafeView's operations, combined with the financial crimes and civil rights violations, elevated the case to federal court. This development brought additional resources and investigative power to our efforts. As the legal strategy came together, it became clear that this case would set precedents for HOA governance and private security operations nationwide. The intersection of property rights, privacy concerns, and community governance raised constitutional questions that courts would need to address. As dust settled from the federal raid, Jennifer Martinez implemented a carefully orchestrated legal strategy. Working with a team of civil rights attorneys, she filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of every resident whose privacy had been violated by SafeView's surveillance system. The complaint detailed thousands of individual privacy breaches, each meticulously documented with timestamps and video evidence. The technical team initiated a systematic sweep of every home in Maple Ridge Estates, uncovering hidden monitoring, devices that went far beyond standard security equipment. Behind innocent-looking smoke detectors and electrical outlets, they found miniature cameras and microphones that had been secretly recording residents' most private moments. Each discovery added another layer to the civil rights violations case. Frank Edwards brought in specialized equipment to detect unauthorized radio frequencies throughout the community. The scanning revealed a mesh network of hidden transmitters that had been relaying residents' personal data directly to SafeView's servers, bypassing normal internet connections. This discovery proved the surveillance operation was far more sophisticated than initially suspected. Detective Rodriguez's investigation expanded when SafeView's former IT director agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. His testimony revealed that the company had developed custom AI algorithms to analyze residents' daily routines, creating detailed psychological profiles that were sold to marketing firms and political consultants. The data mining operation had turned residents' private lives into a profitable commodity. Sarah Chen uncovered internal SafeView documents showing that the company had been beta testing next-generation surveillance technologies in Maple Ridge estates. Experimental systems included thermal imaging cameras that could track movement through walls and audio processing software capable of reconstructing conversations from window vibrations. The community had been turned into an unwitting laboratory for invasive monitoring technologies. The Federal Prosecutor's Office brought in experts from the National Security Agency to analyze SafeView's technical infrastructure. They discovered that the company's surveillance capabilities exceeded those of many law enforcement agencies, raising serious questions about the privatization of mass surveillance. The findings prompted congressional inquiries into the regulation of private security companies. Marcus Chen's forensic accounting team traced money flowing through SafeView's accounts to offshore entities controlled by high-ranking HOA board members. The financial investigation revealed that residents' monthly security fees had been funding luxury purchases, including vacation homes and private aircraft, all hidden behind layers of shell companies. Michael Roberts organized a community meeting where residents could safely share their experiences with federal investigators. The testimonies painted a disturbing picture of life under constant surveillance. Parents described finding cameras hidden in their children's bedrooms, installed during mandatory security upgrades. Elderly residents spoke about being pressured into expensive system installations under threat of eviction. The cybersecurity team discovered that SafeView had created detailed files on every resident, including psychological assessments, personal vulnerabilities, and potential pressure points for coercion. The dossiers included transcripts of private conversations, medical conditions observed through surveillance, and even intimate relationships documented without consent. Jennifer's legal team filed emergency motions to prevent the destruction of evidence as SafeView's remaining employees attempted to wipe servers and shred documents. Federal agents caught several mid-level managers attempting to delete cloud backups containing years of illegally gathered surveillance data. Each attempted cover-up strengthened the conspiracy charges. Deputy Cooper coordinated with federal marshals to secure SafeView's satellite offices across the state. Each location yielded new evidence of the company's extensive surveillance network. Maps showed planned expansion into dozens of other communities, with potential monitoring points already identified and marked for installation. Lisa Blackwood presented evidence to a federal grand jury detailing how SafeView's operation had evolved from basic security monitoring into a sophisticated system of social control. The company had developed algorithms to identify residents who might resist HOA authority, flagging them for increased surveillance and targeted harassment. The technical team's analysis of SafeView's source code revealed capabilities that went beyond simple security monitoring. The system could remotely activate microphones, cameras, and other sensors in residents' homes, creating a comprehensive surveillance network that operated without consent or oversight. This discovery led to additional federal wiretapping charges. Frank Edwards, discovered that SafeView had installed unauthorized equipment in the community's electrical infrastructure, allowing them to monitor power usage patterns and potentially control electrical service to individual homes. The modifications violated numerous safety codes and created significant fire hazards throughout the neighborhood. Sarah Chen's investigation revealed connections between SafeView and several private intelligence firms. The companies had been sharing surveillance data, creating detailed profiles of residents for commercial and political purposes. The unauthorized data sharing added another layer of privacy violations to the growing case. The federal task force uncovered evidence that SafeView had been developing predictive policing algorithms using data gathered from residents. The system attempted to forecast potential rule violations and identify residents likely to challenge HOA authority, leading to preemptive enforcement actions based on machine learning predictions. Jennifer's team filed motions to freeze SafeView's assets and those of individual board members, preventing them from liquidating holdings or transferring funds offshore. The financial restraining orders ensured that resources would be available for resident restitution once the criminal case is concluded. The cybersecurity experts discovered that SafeView had created backdoors in their security systems, allowing them to maintain access even after residents changed passwords or attempted to disable monitoring features. The unauthorized access mechanisms demonstrated the company's intent to maintain surveillance capabilities regardless of resident consent. Detective Rodriguez's investigation revealed that SafeView had compiled extensive databases of residents' personal information, including medical conditions observed through surveillance, financial details gleaned from monitored internet traffic, and intimate relationships documented through security cameras. The unauthorized collection of personal data violated numerous privacy laws and regulations. Federal agents discovered that SafeView had created a separate set of surveillance feeds, accessible only to select HOA board members. These private channels contained the most sensitive footage, used for personal entertainment and potential blackmail. The existence of these secret feeds demonstrated the board's abuse of power and complete disregard for privacy rights. The impact of SafeView's surveillance scandal rippled far beyond Maple Ridge Estates. Media outlets across the country picked up the story, focusing on the implications for privacy rights in the digital age. National news vans lined the streets as reporters interviewed residents about their experiences living under constant surveillance. Each testimony added another layer to the growing narrative of systematic privacy violations and abuse of power. Civil rights organizations descended on the community, offering legal support and advocacy services to affected residents. The Electronic Frontier Foundation sent representatives to document the technical aspects of SafeView's surveillance infrastructure, using the evidence to push for stronger privacy protections nationwide. Their preliminary report described the operation as one of the most sophisticated private surveillance networks ever uncovered. State legislators began drafting new regulations for private security companies and HOA oversight. The revelations from Maple Ridge Estates exposed dangerous gaps in existing laws regarding private surveillance and data collection. Politicians from both parties called for hearings on the privatization of surveillance technology and its potential for abuse. Local real estate values experienced unexpected fluctuations as the scandal unfolded. While some potential buyers were deterred by the community's notorious history, others were attracted by the opportunity to purchase homes at reduced prices in a neighborhood now free from oppressive oversight. Property listings emphasized the dissolution of the old HOA regime and the establishment of new, resident-focused governance. Michael Roberts emerged as a central figure in organizing community recovery efforts. His experience documenting HOA abuses made him invaluable in helping residents understand their rights and options moving forward. He established weekly community meetings where residents could share experiences and participate in planning the neighborhood's future. The psychological impact on residents became increasingly apparent as professional counselors arrived to offer support services. Many people reported experiencing anxiety, paranoia, and trust issues after learning about the extent of surveillance they had endured. Support groups formed organically, providing safe spaces for residents to process their experiences and heal collectively. Sarah Chen's ongoing investigation revealed that several other communities had narrowly avoided implementing similar surveillance systems. HOA boards across the state had been in negotiations with SafeView, attracted by promises of total control over their residents. The exposure of these planned expansions sparked preemptive resistance movements in numerous neighborhoods. Technical experts began the delicate process of decontaminating homes of surveillance equipment while preserving evidence for ongoing legal proceedings. The operation revealed that SafeView's monitoring capabilities extended into unexpected areas, including children's toys equipped with hidden microphones and outdoor lighting fixtures containing concealed cameras. Jennifer Martinez worked with privacy advocates to establish a resident compensation framework. The proposed settlement would not only provide monetary damages, but also fund ongoing psychological support and home security restoration services. The legal team emphasized the importance of making residents whole while preventing similar violations in the future. Frank Edwards coordinated with city officials to implement new building inspection protocols specifically designed to detect unauthorized surveillance equipment. The guidelines would require regular sweeps of common areas and mandatory disclosure of all security system capabilities. These measures would serve as a model for other municipalities grappling with similar concerns. Local universities expressed interest in studying the psychological and sociological effects of long-term surveillance on community dynamics. Researchers began conducting interviews and surveys, documenting how systematic monitoring had altered social behavior and interpersonal relationships within Maple Ridge estates. Their findings would contribute to broader discussions about privacy rights and community governance. Detective Rodriguez's investigation sparked interest from other law enforcement agencies facing similar cases. Police departments nationwide requested briefings on SafeView's methods, seeking to better understand how private security companies could accumulate such extensive surveillance capabilities without detection. The case became a cautionary tale taught at law enforcement academies. The business community responded with innovative solutions for restoring privacy and security to affected homes. Local technology companies developed specialized equipment for detecting hidden surveillance devices, while security consultants offered services to help residents regain control over their personal spaces. The scandal created an entirely new market for privacy protection services. Environmental testing revealed that SafeView's unauthorized equipment installations had created potential health hazards in some homes. The discovery prompted additional health and safety investigations, leading to the development of new standards for residential security system installations. These regulations would emphasize both privacy protection and environmental safety. Religious leaders from various faiths joined together to address the spiritual and moral implications of surveillance culture. They organized community healing sessions and discussions about rebuilding trust between neighbors. These gatherings provided important opportunities for collective processing and reconciliation. Local artists responded to the scandal through creative expression, organizing exhibitions that explored themes of privacy, power, and resistance. Photographs, installations, and multimedia works captured the community's journey from oppression to liberation. The artistic response helped residents process their experiences while documenting this crucial moment in privacy rights history. Educational institutions incorporated lessons from the SafeView scandal into their curricula. Law schools used the case to examine privacy rights and property law, while technology programs studied the technical aspects of surveillance systems. The story became a powerful teaching tool across multiple disciplines. Senior citizen advocacy groups took particular interest in the case, noting how elderly residents had been specifically targeted for expensive security upgrades and intensive monitoring. Their involvement brought attention to the vulnerability of older adults to technological exploitation and fraud. The mental health impacts extended to former SafeView employees who had unknowingly participated in privacy violations. Several came forward seeking counseling, struggling with guilt over their role in the surveillance operation. Their testimonies provided valuable insights into how ordinary people could become complicit in systematic privacy violations. Cybersecurity experts began developing new protocols for detecting and preventing unauthorized surveillance in residential communities. Their recommendations emphasized regular security audits, transparent documentation of monitoring capabilities, and strict limitations on data collection and retention. These guidelines would influence industry standards nationwide. The scandal prompted a broader societal conversation about the balance between security and privacy in residential communities. Public forums and debates explored questions of consent, oversight, and the proper limits of community governance. The discussions highlighted growing concerns about surveillance technology in everyday life. Maple Ridge Estates became a case study in community resilience and recovery. As residents worked together to rebuild their neighborhood, they created new models for democratic community governance based on transparency and mutual respect. Their experience would guide other communities facing similar challenges in the future. Federal prosecutors struck gold when they discovered a hidden vault in Trish Thompson's beach house. Behind a false wall in her home office, investigators found meticulous records dating back 5 years, handwritten notebooks detailing every aspect of SafeView's surveillance operation. The notebooks revealed an obsession with control that bordered on pathological, including detailed psychological profiles of residents and strategies for manipulating their behavior through targeted surveillance. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source when Greg Parker's ex-wife contacted Jennifer Martinez. During their divorce proceedings, she had secretly copied files from his personal laptop, concerned about his increasingly erratic behavior. These files included video recordings of private HOA board meetings, where members openly discussed using surveillance footage to blackmail residents who opposed their policies. The footage showed Trish Thompson specifically instructing security and personnel to target families with children, knowing parents would be more susceptible to pressure. The cybersecurity team made a startling discovery while analyzing SafeView's backup servers. Hidden within encrypted folders were thousands of archived recordings from inside residents' homes, categorized by potential usefulness for coercion. The files included intimate moments, private conversations, and medical emergencies, all logged and rated based on their potential value for controlling residents. This cache of data provided irrefutable evidence of the operation's true purpose. Detective Rodriguez's investigation received unexpected support from a former SafeView programmer who had been troubled by the company's practices. The whistleblower provided access to a secret development server containing prototype surveillance algorithms designed to predict and manipulate resident behavior. The code included comments explicitly discussing methods to create psychological pressure through selective enforcement and targeted harassment. Marcus Chen's forensic accounting team uncovered a sophisticated money laundering operation embedded within SafeView's financial structure. The company had created a complex network of shell corporations to process surveillance equipment purchases, marking up prices by over 1,000% and funneling the excess funds through offshore accounts. Bank records showed board members receiving regular payments disguised as consulting fees. Sarah Chen obtained exclusive access to SafeView's internal communication archives through a source within the company's IT department. The emails and chat logs painted a disturbing picture of calculated manipulation. Messages between board members discussed using surveillance data to identify residents' vulnerabilities and pressure points, with special attention paid to those experiencing financial difficulties or personal crises. Frank Edwards discovered maintenance logs that proved SafeView had deliberately installed faulty equipment in homes of residents who questioned HOA policies. The defective systems would trigger false alarms at night, causing sleep deprivation and psychological stress. These targeted installations were documented in technical reports marked special handling, with specific instructions for maximizing resident discomfort. The federal investigation received crucial testimony from SafeView's former head of training. She provided detailed documentation of the company's instruction programs, including manuals teaching security personnel how to use surveillance data for psychological manipulation. The training materials emphasized techniques for creating fear and dependency while maintaining plausible deniability. A breakthrough in the case came when investigators found Helen Crawford's private diary in her summer cabin. The HOA secretary had documented every illegal decision, apparently as insurance against betrayal by other board members. Her detailed accounts included dates, times, and participants in key meetings where surveillance strategies were planned and implemented. Technical experts analyzing SafeView's equipment made a crucial discovery. The security systems contained hidden cellular modems capable of maintaining surveillance even when residents believed they had disabled their systems. This hardware backdoor proved the company's intent to maintain control regardless of resident consent, adding weight to the criminal conspiracy charges. Deputy Cooper uncovered evidence that Greg Parker had created a special surveillance program targeting elderly residents. The operation involved monitoring their daily routines and medical conditions, using this information to pressure them into expensive security upgrades under threat of reporting their vulnerabilities to family members or healthcare providers. Lisa Blackwood received vital evidence from an unexpected source: Barbara Mitchell's teenage son. Troubled by his mother's involvement in the scheme, he had secretly recorded conversations where board members discussed using surveillance footage to manipulate property values and force out uncooperative residents. His recordings captured explicit admissions of criminal intent. The investigation gained crucial momentum when SafeView's former legal counsel agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. He provided documentation showing that the company's attorneys had repeatedly warned executives about the illegality of their surveillance practices. These warnings had been explicitly ignored, demonstrating conscious disregard for residents' legal rights. Jennifer Martinez's team discovered a hidden pattern in SafeView's operations through statistical analysis of enforcement actions. The data revealed systematic targeting of specific demographic groups, with surveillance intensity increasing for residents who participated in community organizations or expressed interest in local politics. This evidence supported charges of civil rights violations and discriminatory practices. Technical analysis of SafeView's computer systems revealed sophisticated algorithms designed to compile psychological profiles of residents. The software categorized individuals based on observed behaviors, relationships, and vulnerabilities, automatically generating recommendations for applying pressure through selective enforcement and targeted harassment. The federal investigation uncovered evidence that SafeView had been selling residents' private data to marketing firms and political organizations. Company records showed substantial payments for behavioral insights derived from surveillance footage, including analysis of residents' daily routines, purchasing habits, and personal relationships. This unauthorized data trafficking added another layer of criminal liability. Frank Edwards' team discovered that SafeView had installed unauthorized monitoring equipment in community infrastructure, including traffic signals and street lighting. This covert system tracked resident movements throughout the neighborhood, creating detailed patterns of daily activities without any legal authorization or oversight. The prosecution received valuable evidence from SafeView's former human resources director, who had maintained separate personnel files documenting employee concerns about illegal practices. These records included complaints about unauthorized surveillance, evidence of retaliatory actions against whistleblowers, and internal discussions about concealing illegal activities from regulators. Detective Rodriguez uncovered a connection between SafeView's operation and several identity theft rings. The company's surveillance data had been used to gather personal information for criminal enterprises, with certain board members receiving kickbacks for providing access to resident data. This discovery expanded the investigation into organized crime territory. The technical team made a crucial breakthrough when they decrypted SafeView's central database, revealing a comprehensive system for tracking and manipulating resident behavior. The database included psychological profiles, personal vulnerabilities, and detailed strategies for using surveillance data to maintain control over the community through fear and intimidation. The first crack in SafeView's defense appeared during preliminary hearings when Richard Sullivan unexpectedly requested a private meeting with federal prosecutors. The HOA treasurer, facing decades in prison, offered detailed testimony about the surveillance operation's inner workings. His statements implicated not just the board members, but also revealed connections to powerful political figures who had protected the scheme from previous investigations. Pressure mounted on the remaining defendants as Barbara Mitchell followed. Sullivan's lead, approaching Jennifer Martinez with an offer to provide evidence against Trish Thompson. In exchange for consideration during sentencing, she turned over encrypted hard drives containing years of surveillance footage that the HOA president had ordered preserved for potential blackmail. The videos revealed Thompson orchestrating targeted harassment campaigns against residents who challenged her authority. The power structure began to crumble when Helen Crawford suffered a crisis of conscience. The longtime HOA secretary contacted Detective Rodriguez directly, bypassing her attorneys to provide access to private email accounts used by board members. These communications exposed coordinated efforts to obstruct justice, including plans to destroy evidence and intimidate potential witnesses. A decisive shift occurred when Greg Parker's defense strategy imploded during pre-trial motions. His attorneys attempted to argue that the surveillance operation was legal under community safety provisions, but their case fell apart when federal prosecutors produced Parker's own training materials. The documents explicitly detailed methods for using security systems to gather compromising information about residents, with specific instructions for maximizing psychological pressure. Technical experts delivered a crushing blow to SafeView's legal defense by demonstrating that their surveillance systems had been deliberately designed to evade detection. The evidence showed custom modifications that allowed continued monitoring even when residents believed their systems were disabled. This proof of intentional deception undermined any claim that the surveillance had been conducted in good faith for security purposes. Sarah Chen's investigative team uncovered financial records showing that SafeView's operation extended far beyond Maple Ridge Estates. The company had been secretly testing their surveillance techniques in multiple communities, gathering data on thousands of unsuspecting residents. This revelation transformed the case from a local scandal into a national security concern. The prosecution gained unexpected momentum when Frank Edwards discovered that SafeView had installed experimental surveillance equipment without proper safety certification. Testing revealed potential radiation exposure from unauthorized monitoring devices, adding public health violations to the growing list of charges. This evidence sparked a mass exodus of defense attorneys unwilling to defend such egregious misconduct. Jennifer Martinez's strategic masterstroke came when she introduced evidence that SafeView's board members had used surveillance data for insider trading. The security systems had been monitoring residents' home offices, gathering financial information that Thompson and others used to make stock market investments. This revelation brought SEC investigators into the case, dramatically increasing the potential penalties. A pivotal moment arrived when Marcus Chen's forensic analysis revealed that SafeView had been selling surveillance data to foreign entities. The discovery of international connections triggered national security concerns, bringing additional federal resources into the investigation. Board members faced not just criminal charges, but potential espionage investigations. The defense's united front shattered completely when Lisa Blackwood presented evidence that board members had been spying on each other. The surveillance network included secret monitoring of board members' homes, with each participant gathering leverage against their co-conspirators. This web of mutual surveillance and betrayal led to a cascade of plea deals as defendants rushed to protect themselves. Deputy Cooper's investigation revealed that SafeView's operation had extended into local law enforcement, with certain officers receiving payments to ignore resident complaints. The exposure of this corruption led to internal affairs investigations and further erosion of the defendant's support system. Previously sympathetic officials quickly distanced themselves from the case. Technical analysis provided by cybersecurity experts demonstrated that SafeView's systems had been programmed to automatically generate false security alerts for targeted residents. This evidence of systematic harassment destroyed any pretense that the surveillance had served legitimate security purposes. The company's entire operational premise was exposed as a fraudulent scheme for control and exploitation. The prosecution's position strengthened further when Michael Roberts organized former SafeView employees to testify about internal practices. Their coordinated statements revealed a culture of deliberate privacy violations, with employees trained to maximize intrusion while maintaining plausible deniability. These first-hand accounts provided crucial context for the technical evidence. Federal investigators discovered that SafeView had created detailed contingency plans for expanding their surveillance model nationwide. The documents included strategies for infiltrating other communities, corrupting local officials, and neutralizing potential resistance. This evidence of premeditated expansion transformed the case into a precedent-setting battle over privacy rights. A decisive shift in public opinion occurred when Sarah Chen published interviews with former SafeView technicians who had installed the surveillance equipment. Their testimony described deliberate efforts to hide monitoring devices in residence, bedrooms and bathrooms, completely undermining any claim of legitimate security purposes. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Jennifer Martinez secured a major victory when she obtained evidence that SafeView board members had used surveillance footage to manipulate property values. The company had monitored private conversations during home showings, using this information to force property sales at artificially low prices. This proof of market manipulation brought additional federal charges. The remaining defense strategy collapsed when technical experts demonstrated that SafeView's systems had been programmed to specifically target children's activities. The discovery that surveillance algorithms focused on gathering compromising information about minors created insurmountable legal and public relations problems for the defendants. Frank Edwards' investigation revealed that SafeView had deliberately created fire hazards by modifying electrical systems to support their surveillance equipment. The company had knowingly endangered residents' lives to maintain their monitoring capabilities. This evidence of willful endangerment destroyed any remaining sympathy for the defendants. The case reached a turning point when federal prosecutors presented evidence that SafeView board members had discussed using their surveillance capabilities for political control. The company had planned to expand into monitoring local government officials, aiming to influence policy through blackmail. This revelation transformed the case into a matter of democratic security. Lisa Blackwood delivered the final blow by introducing proof that SafeView had maintained secret archives of surveillance footage for future exploitation. The company had categorized and preserved invasive recordings of residents, creating a permanent database of personal information for potential coercion. This evidence of long-term predatory intent sealed the defendant's fate. The federal courthouse fell silent as Judge Eleanor Martinez delivered her verdict. After weeks of testimony and mountains of evidence, justice had finally arrived at Maple Ridge Estates. Trish Thompson, standing rigid in her designer suit, visibly flinched as the judge announced a 25-year sentence for her role in orchestrating the surveillance conspiracy. The former HOA president's carefully maintained facade crumbled as federal marshals led her away. Greg Parker received 18 years for his part in implementing the illegal surveillance operation. The judge specifically cited his abuse of perceived authority and the psychological trauma inflicted on residents through his aggressive intimidation tactics. As he was escorted from the courtroom, his former security team members watched from the gallery, already having accepted plea deals in exchange for their testimony. The remaining board members faced sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years, with additional fines that would strip them of all assets gained through their criminal enterprise. Judge Martinez emphasized that the punishments needed to serve as a deterrent for other HOAs contemplating similar surveillance schemes. The message was clear. Using security systems for control and manipulation would carry severe consequences. Jennifer Martinez's civil case resulted in a landmark settlement exceeding $100 million. The funds would be distributed among affected residents, with additional allocations for ongoing psychological counseling and home security restoration. The settlement terms included provisions for long-term monitoring of HOA activities nationwide, creating new standards for transparency and resident protection. The technical dismantling of SafeView's surveillance infrastructure became a model for privacy protection efforts across the country. Cybersecurity experts developed new protocols for detecting and removing unauthorized monitoring equipment, while also establishing guidelines to prevent future abuse of security technology. Their recommendations were quickly adopted by regulatory agencies and industry associations. Maple Ridge Estates underwent a complete transformation in the wake of the verdicts. Residents voted to establish a new community governance structure based on transparency and democratic participation. The reformed organization included strict limitations on surveillance activities and mandatory resident approval for any security measures. Monthly meetings became forums for open discussion, rather than exercises in intimidation. Frank Edwards worked with city officials to implement comprehensive building code reforms, specifically addressing security system installations. The new regulations required detailed documentation of all monitoring capabilities, regular independent audits, and clear disclosure of data collection practices. These standards would protect future residents from unauthorized surveillance, while ensuring legitimate security needs could be met safely and legally. The case sparked a national conversation about privacy rights in residential communities. Legal scholars cited the Maple Ridge Estates prosecution as a turning point in defining the boundaries between security measures and personal privacy. Law schools added dedicated courses examining the implications of surveillance technology in community governance, using the case as a primary teaching tool. Michael Roberts emerged as a leading advocate for HOA reform, traveling to communities across the country to share lessons learned from the SafeView scandal. His practical experiences helped other neighborhoods establish effective oversight mechanisms and resident protection measures. The grassroots movement he inspired led to state-level legislation strengthening homeowner rights against invasive surveillance. Detective Rodriguez's investigative methods became a blueprint for law enforcement agencies dealing with private security overreach. Police departments nationwide implemented new training programs focusing on the intersection of property rights, privacy protection, and community safety. The protocols developed during the SafeView case would guide future investigations of similar violations. Sarah Chen's comprehensive reporting on the case earned multiple journalism awards and led to a best-selling book examining the broader implications of surveillance culture in residential communities. Her work highlighted the delicate balance between security and privacy, sparking important discussions about technology's role in modern community living. The prosecution's success brought unexpected changes to the security industry. Companies specializing in residential surveillance systems faced increased scrutiny and regulation. New certification requirements emphasized privacy protection alongside security features, forcing many providers to completely redesign their products and services. Lisa Blackwood's prosecution strategy established important legal precedents for handling cases involving technology-enabled privacy violations. Her approach to combining traditional criminal charges with modern cybercrime statutes created a framework for future prosecutions. Law enforcement agencies nationwide adopted her methods for building cases against surveillance abuse. Marcus Chen's forensic accounting techniques revealed the need for stronger financial oversight of HOA operations. His findings led to new requirements for independent audits and transparent reporting of security-related expenditures. The reforms helped prevent other communities from falling victim to similar schemes disguised as security improvements. The technical evidence collected during the investigation proved invaluable for developing new privacy protection technologies. Security researchers used insights from SafeView's systems to create better detection methods for unauthorized surveillance equipment. Their innovations helped residents regain control over their personal spaces and digital privacy. The psychological impact of constant surveillance became a focus of academic research, with multiple universities conducting long-term studies of affected residents. Mental health professionals developed specialized treatment protocols for addressing surveillance-related trauma. Their findings contributed to a deeper understanding of privacy's role in psychological well-being. Real estate markets responded to the case with new emphasis on privacy protection in residential communities. Home buyers began demanding detailed information about security systems and surveillance policies. Property values in communities with strong privacy guarantees saw significant increases, creating economic incentives for responsible security practices. The dissolution of SafeView's surveillance network revealed unexpected positive changes in community dynamics. Residents reported stronger interpersonal connections and increased civic engagement once freed from constant monitoring. The experience demonstrated how invasive surveillance had suppressed natural community development. Environmental testing of removed surveillance equipment led to stricter regulations on electronic waste disposal and radiation emissions from security devices. The discoveries prompted a comprehensive review of safety standards for residential security technology. New guidelines emphasized protecting both privacy and physical well-being. The legal victory brought closure to years of fear and uncertainty in Maple Ridge estates. As residents reclaimed their community, the focus shifted from surveillance to genuine security through neighborhood cooperation and transparent governance. The painful experience transformed into a powerful example of collective resilience and positive change. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.